They don't fail. Go, please. Come on, game. Pause that, get that out of here. All right, I know I just started. Nobody's in here yet. Here's the deal. Here's the plan. I'm addicted to PoE2. There's a lot of content out there. I'm a racing game content creator, and I'm trying to, pull away from that just because of, it's just, you can't really grow. You know what I mean? What's up, that kid? Bug up. But look, here's the deal. Path of Exile. Played it for the first time a year ago. Super into it. Really excited for PoE2. You got all the big guys. They got to go play it. You got Legendary Drops in an interview. You got Talkative Tri. He's doing interviews every single day. I believe he's doing Jonathan from Grinding Gear Games at some point today. I haven't looked at to see exactly what the schedule is. You got Darth. You've got Hog. You've got Rax. You've got Ghastly. Asmon's talked about it. Like literally all the big guys. All right. I want to break into Path of Exile because I enjoy it. Still a newbie when it comes to this stuff. All right. But we're learning. We're getting there. And I feel like, PoE2 is going to be a little easier just because you can respec a lot easier. But we're going to get in there. We're going to watch some of these videos because a lot of these interviews are just an hour to 2 hours. Listen to what they had to say. Talk about it. I'm going to progress through Act 9, Act 10. Hopefully get the maps today. I feel like I should be able to. And, we're going to go from there. That's what today's going to be about, boys. All right, that's what today is going to be about. All right, what we're doing. All right, so this is Legendary Drops. Dude makes some really good content. He's he's always getting people reacting to him, but he just makes good videos. So I will drop the link in chat here, and then when the live stream is over, I will link him in the description. There's the first one. We'll pin that. We'll get moving here.
Wouldn't it be great to know?
This is I interviewed PoE's director on Path of Exile 2 and the biggest issues in gaming. Do it.
Wouldn't it be great to know what the secret is behind having a successful live service game so we could share it with the world? One of the things that I've always wanted to do was to sit down with someone that has a successful game or a successful live service game and dissect the inner workings of it to understand how they know the player's perspective so well and how they can deliver a game that players actually want to play. And in this case, well, we get to do just that. I got the opportunity to sit down with Jonathan Rogers, one of the co-founders and the technical director of Grinding Gear Games, Path of Exile 1 and their upcoming game, Path of Exile 2. This is an incredibly special conversation where we get to talk about both games, the success of the first one and what we get to look forward to in the second one. But even more so, I even go in to talk about some of the issues that I'm seeing in the games industry today. We have a little bit of back and forth on that as well. This is a very special interview, a very cool video. I'm so happy to share this with you guys. It would not have been possible if it wasn't for you in the first place. Without your support, I wouldn't be able to reach these people. So I have to thank you for this. And this video,
dude, deserves it.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Oh yeah.
True. So you're one of the founders of Grinding Gear Games.
There's been a lot of info
what led you guys
coming
to
out.
make Path of Exile, and did you guys think you would make it this far?
So I actually was one of the founders straight out of university.
See what's going on with this one.
I was friends with Chris, who he was basically my best friend through university, and
I'm
we
not doing the same lab right now.
I mean, I knew I wanted to be a game developer from the point I was like 10 years old, right? Like I was doing game development like as a hobby right from that point. So it really wasn't a question of like, was I going to be a game developer? It was a question of like, how is that going to happen? And Chris, he was actually the one who sort of suggested, look, what we need to be doing is making a sequel to Diablo 2. That was basically his view on things. And I obviously love Diablo 2 as well.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like, at the time when he was suggesting this, I wasn't still a player of it. You know what I mean? Like I'd played it a huge amount
really?
earlier, but Chris was still deep in Diablo 2. And obviously loved the game. But he just made a really good case for the fact that, you know what, like there hasn't been a game that got the whole formula right for a really long time. Like there was no evidence at the time that Blizzard was making it, right? Like we just had no idea.
Yeah, there was like a 10-year lull or something, right?
Yeah, it was that because I mean, that's the whole thing. But effectively, they hadn't announced anything. You know, like as far as we were concerned, it was just like here's just a game that was still selling. By the way, like people were still selling physical copies of Diablo 2.
Yep.
Like it might have been like 10 years later or something like that. The game was still selling like hotcakes. And it's like okay.
It's still good today.
Yeah. There were you had a game and it's
Blizzard
like, okay,
launching
no one's
the
made, like, a true
Diablo 2
successor to
like
this thing. It's still selling
season or remaster or something. Literally the day PoE2 comes out.
Stuff.
Crazy.
Why the hell, you know, like, are we not the ones doing this? So, yeah, I mean, basically, we, you know, we decided, hey, we'll just get started. And I was doing a lot of hobby game development. Chris had done a little bit of that, but, you know, he was actually doing some security stuff. And we were just like, okay, like, well, let's just do it then. So, yeah, we just started writing code and getting things done. And, you know, we went a long way. And, you know, I remember at the very beginning, because, like, we actually did, like, think, okay, well, what is the, what would success look like for doing this? Like, if we're going to do this, like, what would we have to actually achieve? And the thing that we thought that we needed to achieve was effectively 10,000 concurrent players. That was the amount that we sort of worked out that if we had that, the amount of money that we would be making would be able to support the studio,
like 20,000
and everything would be okay. So that was kind of our, like, what we were trying to do. So anything beyond that point, as far as we were concerned, was just gravy. You know what I mean? Like everything beyond that was great. So yeah, I mean, we pretty much achieved that, like, right from the start. Like as soon as we had our closed beta, like, you know, things were going well and the company just did really well. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, as I said, like, that was kind of our thing. Like we never really at the time sort of thought that we weren't thinking like we had to be the biggest game ever. We were just like, we can be sustainable if we have 10,000 concurrent users. So that's the audience we need to attract. If we can do that, then we're good. And so that was kind of our thinking. I think the sort of the grander scale is something that yeah, it wasn't really in our mind.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, Path of Exile has been a bit of a standout success, especially like with free-to-play games, ARPG specifically. I still think there's not a lot of competition out there. Even you guys saw an opportunity, and I mean, we've had a couple of games come out over the last few years, but nothing in the same vein. What do you guys attribute to the game's longevity and its success?
So when we started, I guess what we saw was there were kind of like 5 pillars to make a good action RPG. Like there's what and these are the things that we thought, okay, like there are people who have some of these, but there's no other game that has all of them except for Diablo 2. So the first one would be, well, I mean, in no particular order, you've got random level generation.
Yep.
For longevity, you just need to have it. You need to have it. I mean, you need to do it well, because if you don't have that, I mean, look, things are just going to get boring very quickly. You've just played through the same thing 1,000 times. I mean, obviously, even with random level generation, that can still happen, but it takes a lot longer. The next thing is a secure online economy. That's why I fell off a D4
pretty early.
So effectively, you have to have the ability to trade items,
you know,
and it has to be secure in the sense that nobody can dupe them. There's no cheats. There's nothing like that. Like that's really important for that long-term feeling, because it makes the stuff that you find feel like it has value, which I think is very important for the long term. The next one is that you have to have a random item system. So, and what I mean by that, what I mean is like the item system has to have elements of chance. And it has to be that anything you kill could be the thing that could drop the next amazing thing that you need to find. So in practice, since we launched, we have also added more deterministic things as well, which I think do have a place. But you certainly need, like, it needs to be that just killing any random monster could be the one that drops, like, the amazing item. Like, you still need that feeling all the time. Otherwise, you know, you like... If you don't have that, then what happens is that you see them, you finish a grind, and then the next giant grind is like stretching out ahead of you. And if you don't think you're going to get any rewardingness until the point where you finish that, that's a good moment that you might choose to quit. So that's actually one of those things that is really important as well. Yeah. The next one is you need action combat. And at the time, the reason why what we were talking about there is, as opposed to the kind of more MMO style combat that you had back then, which was like very like, you know, like just everything's on cooldown, like you have a million abilities and it's just kind of like one thing after another. That sort of cooldown rotation, like sort of slower paced combat that you had from the MMOs at the time. And was that all of them, or did I say 4? I can't quite remember now. Where was I up to? Did I miss one?
Maybe, I think so.
No, right. So there was the other one. The other one was a deep,
you said the loot and the action combat and the trading.
Yeah. So a deep system of character customization. So effectively, you need enough depth in the way that you build your characters to make it so that you're willing to play through the same character. So not through the same character, through the game again, but with a different build, so that can still be interesting to you. That was something that D2 didn't really have as much. But one thing D2 did have was the concept of the ladder reset, which is effectively like the fresh economic start. And that concept was ultra important because, once again, if you're doing ladder resets, then you need to, have the ability for your character to be different every time. There needs to be lots of build variety and things that you can do so that you feel like you're having a different experience each time as well. So those are kind of the like 5 pillars that we had. And I think that really at this point, the one that I think a lot of companies still don't have, the ones that I think that companies still often don't do, one of them is they're really afraid to do full economic resets where there's absolutely zero progress that carries on between the leagues. That's something that, so a lot of companies are doing seasonal content now, but the thing that after they do the first one that players will always say is, oh, we want you to have some way to skip the campaign, we want to have some way to to blah, 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 keep, right? They're going to say that, right? But I think it's actually ultimately long-term very harmful because it means that when you have a full economic reset, it means that new players can join your game and not feel like they're behind everyone. Like they're behind everyone in terms of knowledge, but they're not behind everyone in terms of physically speaking, everyone who starts a part of Exile League is on the same playing field, apart from what they know about the game. So I think that's super important. So that's one that a lot of companies still aren't doing. But the other one as well that a lot of companies don't do is item trade with no binding of items, and so that really keeps the value. And a lot of companies are very afraid to do that. It's one of those things I think is ultra important. Like it leads to so many problems, and people look at the problems and they assume that those problems are worse than the benefit. And I think that's partly because the benefit is a little bit more intangible. Like it's harder to kind of appreciate the value that players feel, like because it's kind of it doesn't even kind of matter initially, and it's like one of those longer term kind of like concerns. But I think that is really valuable, and it's something that I wish more games would do.
I'm actually really happy you said something about that because I think it's one of the things where I look at you guys. I also I play Warframe. That's one of my big games, right? And you guys are very similar in that with being able to trade loot and whatnot. So many games stay away from that, and I think it adds so much more value not only to what the player finds in the game, but I don't really know how to put my finger on it exactly, but I think it actually does have something to do with those concurrent player numbers, and it's something that brings players back because they know no matter what when they're playing the game that there's really nothing keeping them from reaching the rest of the players that might be ahead of them.
Right.
So yeah, that's cool. So where was I at? So you guys already have a successful game with PoE. You guys could have just visually updated it and continued to grow it. Why did you guys choose to make a second game making PoE2? And also, why did you choose to support both?
So it's funny because we kind of creeped towards it in a strange way. Initially, the plan literally was, okay, we need to visually update Path of Exile 1. But there was a very specific thing that was that was the big problem at the time. And effectively, what it is that the rigs for the player characters, that's like one of the first things that you'd need to make in a game, right? Because everything, like all the character animations and all the skills, but also all the armors need to be attached to them and all that stuff. Like all that stuff kind of goes on top of that. So once you've done that, it's something that you really can't change without redoing, everything related to characters. And we were like, okay. These rigs are from 2006. The people who made them at the time were very inexperienced.
Yeah.
We didn't know what we were doing. We also, every player character had its own rig, which means that we were doing 7 times the amount of work to support everything that we should have needed to do. And just the overall, there were just so many problems with them. So okay, in order to make the graphics of PoE1 better, we're going to have to change these rigs. So we make new rigs, and we're like, okay, now we're going to have to re-rig all the armors. But if instead of re-rigging armors, surely we should visually update the armors instead of just re-rigging the old ones, right? Because obviously, it's like, well, we're doing much work anyway. We might as well just create new items because those will look better and everything will be better than that. And we have to make new animations for everything. So rather than like remaking old skills. I mean, effectively, we might as well be making new ones, right? That are cooler and better.
Yeah.
So effectively, you know,
forgot about
it
these.
started up there. And at some point, we're like, okay, but like the graphics of the starting areas in PoE1, you know, we like the first act is like a particularly ugly. We really should like make a new act one, you know, like you know, so to make that look better as well. Because you know, like by the time you got these great looking characters, but then they're in old environments, like that looks bad. So we really should update that as well. So effectively, like we just kept on like more and more things. Kind of like got added and added as like, you know, and effectively
It just turned into a new game.
Yeah, sort of did like that. And so when we even announced Path of Exile 2,
Yeah.
we announced it as like, okay, we're going to have 2 campaigns, because at that point we decided to redo the whole campaign. We're going to have 2 campaigns, but it's going to have a shared end game, so that it's like effectively still the same game. And that was kind of what we announced initially in 2019, because at that point we were still in the mindset of like, we're effectively just, this is effectively just a giant expansion to Path of Exile that we're making here. And then even later than that, then at some point, the point when it really split into 2 games was the point when I started wanting to make some much more serious changes to gameplay feel and to balance and so on. I don't think those necessarily were like came from a specific philosophy that differed from PoE1 or anything. It was just that like, in order to make these skills feel good, I feel like I need to make these changes kind of thing. And at some point, we started getting a lot of like, especially from like QA, who are still mostly working on PoE1, and like some of the designers who are working exclusively on PoE1, we started to just get a lot of like, oh man, you can't really change this. Like it's changed, like, you know, like because, you know, people are used to this and it won't be compatible with what people are doing. Like there was all sorts of, we just started to get a lot of like pushback on things where like, okay, it's going to break the game if you make this change. It's going to break the game if you make that change due to existing stuff, and like just various things like that. Just like lots of concern about that from inside the team. And so I started thinking about it, and I kind of just thought like, you know what, like at this point, we're effectively remaking everything. We might as well just go all the way and actually split the games apart from each other. And then as soon as we did that, it immediately was very freeing, because we could suddenly make a whole bunch of decisions that I guess we would have been, you know, like as I said, that were hard to make just because of a lot of pushback within the studio about things. And like those people, it's like, well, if it's a different game, it's like a whole different question, right? We don't have to worry about all the stuff from the past. You know, we can make a lot of changes, and that's sort of how we ended up with that. But I mean, at the same time, there was also this idea that like, we did need to make Path of Exile, in order to really make Path of Exile grow to sort of a much larger audience. We really did have to, like, there are a lot of people who've tried Path of Exile in the past who effectively, you know, like,
Me.
fell off it for whatever reason. Maybe they didn't like the combat, or maybe it was too complex, or maybe they didn't like this, that, or the other thing.
6 years
like,
straight, I've tried the game and quit.
Yeah. So it's effectively by putting a line in the sand and saying, okay, we're making a sequel now. It effectively means all those people who tried it before and maybe didn't like it are like, okay, well maybe I'll give this another shot now, because you know you were saying that you have made a substantially different game here, which obviously we have. So you know it's a time for then all of those people who tried the game in the past to come back and give it another shot. I think that is another important element of, you know, making a sequel like that. But yeah, I was just saying that's kind of how we ended up where we are.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. All right. So on that, actually, because there's we're going to get into some PoE2 questions here now, but from my perspective, I got some time playing the game. I'm a big ARPG fan. I grew up playing Diablo 2. I had a cracked version on my mom's computer. She could barely pull me off of it any chance she got. But from my perspective, this game feels like a true evolution in the genre. It's the pacing, the combat, the dodge mechanics. What were you guys trying to accomplish with this? Because it does feel like an evolution. It doesn't play like any other ARPG I've played before.
So it really was an effort to make that combat feel just like, yeah, just much better. And I think one of the things, so whenever we launch a Path of Exile 1 expansion, it's always very interesting to see what people say outside of the Path of Exile community. Like obviously the Path of Exile community gets all hyped about whatever the next big thing is, but it's very interesting to see other communities, because what you see there is what people, usually the top comment will be like, oh, you know, I tried this, but the combat feels so dated and bad and all that sort of stuff, right? Effectively, like, it's interesting to see what it is that people who don't play PoE dislike about PoE, because that's a very interesting thing to think, okay, this is the stuff that we can potentially improve in order to get it better. And like, I love action games, you know, like I'm just a big action game player. So I just wanted to make something that to me felt like a decent action game. You know, like I want to kind of be able to have the best of both worlds. I want to be able to feel like an action RPG as far as like all the stats and like, you know, interesting stuff like along the traditional like looter type game.
Build diversity,
but I also want, Yeah, but I also want you to be able to approach it like an action game.
Damn,
you know,
67%
where
spell
you know,
damage.
you've got
what do I got
mechanics
now?
that you can dodge, that you can
67,
understand. Like, you know, you
damn
can see
it.
everything's
Alright,
got wind
so
up, so you can see like you know what's going to hit you. You can learn mechanics of bosses. Like you can effectively. I think if your character is weaker, you can overcome some degree of that in PoE2 with play skill. But then at the same time, if you don't have as much play skill, you also can overcome some of that by getting more stats and doing more grinding. So ideally, we can kind of get the best of both of those worlds. But yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to I'm an action game fan.
That
I
is
want us to
better.
be good on the level of an action game.
Yeah. So actually, this lines up perfectly with this. So one of the things that I noticed actually getting hands-on time with the game was that every encounter that I got into, regardless of whatever character I played or how far I got
Gotta
into the
switch
game
that,
or how
boys.
much gear I got or skills or whatever it might be, every
Gonna
single
switch to
encounter
it.
felt meaningful.
We're
And it was in
better.
a way, and I was talking to some of the other creators at the event, and I said that this doesn't feel like a second monitor game anymore. Because like Path of Exile, Diablo, these are games I got YouTube up on the second monitor. I'm watching something else, and I like it demanded my attention at every given moment. Otherwise, I very easily could lose, even though it was fighting something that otherwise I could probably overpower. Oddly, it reminds me of Elden Ring in a lot of ways, because it's just that engaging. How did you guys manage to create that kind of feel? Was that the intention, and what kind of impact do you guys think that's going to have on the gameplay overall?
So we really do want to make sure that, especially the first time you play through the campaign, that the combat isn't. And I mean, I think that the word around here that often says we don't want the combat to feel trivialized. Like we want it actually, yeah, like as you said, we want it to feel meaningful. And this has been a really big tension point in development a lot of the time because I guess there's several reasons for that. So one of them is that if you're not expecting that as a player, that is like a very big different game feel.
Yeah.
You know, like it's a huge deal, right? So, and like that's one of those things that I feel like it's really important that people understand is that like that yeah, like you're gonna have to concentrate on the bosses. Like the bosses shouldn't be the you just walk up and kill them in 5 seconds. You need to
I agree.
like observe the mechanics and engage with them and like understand them and like like it might take you a couple of deaths before
That's
you
fine.
kill a
That's how it
boss.
should be. Figure it out.
That kind of thing. And I think
not
that
adding anything?
like yeah, I think from a designer's perspective as well, you kind of want like you put all this effort into designing a boss. Like you don't want a player to just walk in and be like, oh yeah, I just killed it in 2 seconds. Like nothing you did mattered. You know what I mean? Like so on that level, we just want the combat to feel like it matters. But at the same time, you do need a feeling of progression through the game, and you do need to make sure that at some point you get to the point where you feel much more powerful than the content. Now, I think the difference is with PoE 2 versus 1 is that the point where you reach that is a bit later than it was in PoE 1. And the other thing as well is that people have so much knowledge of PoE 1 at this point that they can reach that
I'll lose my
trivialization
cast
point
speed.
very, very quickly right from the start of the game.
You're just gonna ditch it for now.
You know, like obviously we've added like
Alright,
lots of
it's not
content
that
over the
much
years and all
better.
sorts of stuff like that. So it's kind of gotten to the point now where PoE 1 combat really just doesn't kind of like matter very much overall, unfortunately. So yeah, we were trying to get back to a situation where the combat wasn't trivialized, but then once again, there's a lot of tension, right? Like as we are doing
Let
testing.
me pull up path of building here. We'll unpause that. Figure out where I gotta go next. There. Yeah. 1 mana regeneration. 2 arcane will. Okay.
On closed betas and so on, you definitely get a cohort of people who are like, oh, you know, effectively, I mean, ultimately they're finding the game too hard, right, for their level of concentration that they want to put into it. And so we really have to, like, you know, do a fine line here. And so ideally what we can achieve is that if you are finding something too hard, you can go and grind. You can get a level of power from what you're from the stuff you know that you know look around the world, get more stuff, and sort of come back. And that's like a thing that you can do. But ideally, we're in a situation where the amount of that you do kind of depends on how hard you're finding the content. So ideally, you kind of like do side content to the point where you reach the level of difficulty with the combat that you feel like you need to reach before you're feeling comfortable.
I got
And
you. Okay.
it was actually a realization that we had relatively recently, because there was actually an interesting thing. You mentioned Elden Ring. There's actually an interesting thing I noticed with Elden Ring, which is that if I'm playing Elden Ring and I try to kill a boss and I can't kill it, then what I do is I just go and do some random side content until I feel powerful enough to come back. And that was something that Path of Exile 2 players in the closed betas were not doing. And I was kind of like, Jesus Christ, it's a fly. Sorry. That was something that Path of Exile 2 players in the closed betas weren't doing. And I was kind of, well, why is this? Like, why is it that people just slam their face against a boss again and again and again in PoE2, where in a game like Elden Ring, you'd go off and you'd, and you would...
That's fair. I mean, that's what I would do, just because I've played so many Soul games.
In Elden Ring, you have a map that invites you to to the idea that there's other stuff out there that you could find, and that, like, you know, there's all sorts of stuff on there, and you kind of realize, oh, you know what,
that's fair.
There's other stuff I could be doing if I'm not enjoying this. And Path of Exile 2 initially, the map didn't really kind of bring across any of that. So recently what we decided to do is make sure that on the map there's like icons for all of the like side content and little extra things that we've put around the area, so that when you open that map you kind of feel like, oh, there's so much stuff here that I could be doing. And so then it kind of just reminds you of the fact that, you know, if you're having trouble with a boss, you're like, okay, well, you know what, I'm just going to go off and do something else. And if you do that, you will get meaningful upgrades, because we've also made sure that all of that content has interesting like fixed drops, or just like little things that they can do that will give you a meaningful upgrade that will potentially make you stronger, to allow you to defeat that boss. So that was something that we it's not an obvious connection between, like, you know, how come people are finding bosses frustrating to like being, oh, we need to improve the map, but you know, like that ended up, I sort of realized that, like, you know, why is it different between these different games, and I think that was very important. So adding that has actually improved the experience, I think, quite a lot.
Yeah.
Jesus,
You get...
what? Just go away.
Okay. Oh man, it's actually it's so crazy that you say that about the map, because the wild thing is, I was thinking about it while I was actually playing the game, because I had gotten to a boss that absolutely handled me, and then part of me was sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, I can beat this by skill, right? Like I can just pay attention, learn the mechanics, dodge all the mechanics, and do my best not to get hit, and beat the boss that way. And then I opened the map and I saw there was like a bunch of mini bosses that I hadn't even touched yet. And I was like, well, let's go ahead and go around here. I'll probably get some skill gems or some uncut, you know, support gems off of them, be able to build something out, maybe find some better equipment or whatever, and then come back a little bit later. I did that, sure enough, got better support gems, got better higher end skill gems and some better equipment, came back, handled the boss. It was still tough. I'm not going to say like I didn't have to try anymore. I still had to try. But, you know, it felt a little bit more measured, because I was actually dealing enough damage to take it down within a realistic amount of time, right? And
well, I'm really glad to hear that worked, because that was my thesis for how we were going to fix this problem. And you know, I'm really glad to hear that worked. But the other thing as well is, Jesus Christ, go away!
Somebody get a fly swatter.
Like smelling here or something?
Yeah, I don't know. When was the last time you left the office, man?
Okay. So anyway, what was I saying? So yeah, so the other thing as well, though, is it really did force us to create a lot more of that side content throughout the game as well, and I think that really helped, because having all those like kind of little interesting encounters has just made the game feel so much more alive. You know, like there's just there was tons of cases where we did things like we would so it's funny, because like, so we've got all these bosses in the game, there's like tons of them everywhere, but then we also have things that I guess like they're still sort of bosses. I think if you look at a lot of games, you would still consider them to be bosses. But effectively, they're like hard-coded rare monsters that have specific abilities. And a lot of the time what we've done is we've taken things from like later in the game and moved them earlier to use them as like a boss in that sort of area, things like that. So, for example, I don't know if in the forest you found that that witch in the witch's hut.
Yes.
Was that a thing you found?
Yeah,
you did?
yeah.
All right.
That's where I got some like leveled up potions or flasks.
Yeah, exactly. So that witch actually comes from Act 5. That was just one of the regular monsters from Act 5. We took it down. We added this like frost breath ability.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, added a little bit of stuff around, like, you know, you walk in and there's the cauldron, and then she disappears and goes behind you, and like, you know, a few things like that. And it's like really quickly we were able to create a little encounter like that. And if you're in Act 1, a random Act 5 regular monster feels like a boss to you.
Yeah.
So that's like just like a nice way to just add little bits of kind of like we've kind of done little things like that all over the place, just like little touches that add you know, that just make the game world feel a lot more alive, and allow us to drop specific items. So yeah, that one, once again, that one's designed to specifically give you potions. But actually, there's another interesting one with that one, which is that I don't know if you found in the previous area there was a little camp with some zombies that drops a skill gem. You might have missed it.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Okay, so basically, so if you miss that one, then the reward that you would have gotten from that one will also drop from the witch in the next area.
Oh, okay, all right.
So effectively what this means is kind of like a catch-up account where we can effectively say, okay, there's all this random optional stuff around, but if you miss some of it, then we can forward some of those drops on to a later point so that we can still sort of make sure that at the beginning you sort of have a reasonable, like we want to try, what we're trying to do there is we're trying to make sure that the bottom of the people who are the most unlucky effectively still have a reasonable experience. So that's the kind of thing that we can do to there's like little tricks like that we can do to make that more interesting.
That's
nice.
Incredibly smart, and it worked. So there you go. I'm happy your plan worked there. So actually, along with like missing content and stuff like that, I am the quintessential new player for Path of Exile. I've tried the game like 6 times over the last 6 years. I fell off every single time. It wasn't until Settlers of Kalgur that finally got me, mostly because I could respec using gold.
Right.
That's really what it was. I couldn't tell you how many times I had bricked a character just because I couldn't figure out how to build. I get like to the end of the campaign or near the end of the campaign and just get smashed. You guys have made a lot of changes that have made the game far more accessible. It's obvious that you're trying to aim this towards newer players. How do you guys manage to balance something?
What's up, Madhu? Yeah, man, like I don't know why people are scared to play a game that has more content than a game that costs $70 to $100. You know what I mean? It'll be free to play after, early access is over, but fucking $30 for a game that you could play for thousands of hours and people are complaining. It's just like all the people that complain about like Motorfest or fucking speed passes or the year 2, but $30 is too much. Like, you're supporting the game for the next year of free content, Oh man, it's so crazy. I want to play everything for free forever. Oh, it's wild, man. Like $30 ain't much these days. Not much.
That is going to be good for new players while still keeping the game the same for those hardcore players that they've come to love for Path of Exile.
Yeah, so it really
damage?
comes down to trying to remove what's called incidental complexity. So effectively, you have what you might call necessary complexity, which is effectively in order to get the depth that you want, there's a certain amount of complexity you need to be able to make the system work at all. But then also you have incidental complexity, which is effectively things that are complicated where simplifying them doesn't change the depth of the system at all. And a great example of that is the way that skill gems work, where previously skill gems were on items. It meant that every time you upgraded an item, you had to worry about your skill gems. That didn't change anything about the options that you had for how to combine skill gems or anything like that. So effectively, I would class that as incidental complexity because it's something that made the game more complicated, but it didn't change anything about what you could actually achieve in the system in terms of like how you what the ultimate way that the combos you can do, anything about how you build a character. All it did was just
cheap
get in the way.
Skyrim was like 50 on
so
Steam
what we're
still.
trying to do is just remove all that stuff that's getting in
that's
the
what I'm saying.
way. That's not.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's like Path of Exile gets a lot of support, right? Like, they're so trying to stash that, and plus with the $30, you get $30 of in-game, like the in-game MTX money, where you can buy stash tabs or cool effects, or like, look at the orb swarming around my character. Like, you can spend money on shit like that. Like, so you're effectively, it's such a value, man. I don't understand why people gotta complain about $30. Le Mans Ultimate Early Access, $30. Yeah, it's cheap, man. Cheap. People are always gonna come. Fucking install DoorDash on your phone. Go do like 3 deliveries. There's $30 one day. Make it. You know what I mean? Crazy.
Making the game deeper.
It's crazy.
While keeping all the stuff that is
I'm ready
necessary
for
to
it,
make the
man.
game interesting and have interesting depth. So if we can do that, then I think that we will have something which new players are going to find a lot more friendly. So yeah, like the skill system being a great example. I mean, things like making respecs easier in gold and stuff like that. Like that stuff all really helps. There's just a lot of these things, and really, like what we were doing before. Some of that stuff just wasn't really necessary. It was not improving the game to do it that way.
Fair.
So the answer there is effectively, I believe that you can have it both ways, but at the same time, like I never want to make a decision that's going to make the game less deep. And it's very interesting because like obviously that can be that can be something that you know, can mean different things to different people. So like here's an interesting one that was like a one recently that we changed, which was that we changed from 5 flasks down to from having 5 flask slots that you could do whatever you wanted with.
Now you got the belts.
To having
TUSC
just
was
a
60.
life
That's what I'm
slot
saying.
and a mana flask slot.
What I'm saying.
And
Getting rid of the piano keys.
Yeah, exactly. So
and
you
look how
obviously we're
bad
trying
that
to solve
game
a real problem,
was.
'cause that one actually came out of the fact that whenever I was
Not
actually
even
watching new
finished.
players play, the thing that they would screw up the most was using flasks. Like they would press the wrong button, they'd do one that was empty. There was all sorts of stuff that they'd be doing
delirium?
there that just wasn't that was causing them to die. And I was like, at the same time, you've also got the whole flask piano thing, which is like, you know, not great. And but the thing is, when I first
I do
when we
like
first
this
said,
change.
okay, well, what if we just had you know, 1 mana and one life slot? The first reaction to that is, oh, you're simplifying the game, you're dumbing it down, this kind of thing. Like, this is something that we have to be worried about. So then it's like, okay, well, how can we have a system where we can bring back some of the interesting build choices that you felt like you had before, while not bringing back all of the annoying garbage that people had to do and like all the stuff that was making new players fail.
The physical actually having to use the potions part.
Yeah, exactly. So that's when we thought about, okay, well, what do people really want the variability of their flasks to be able to achieve? And the answer is they want solutions to things like getting frozen and like, you know, fire, like burning and this kind of stuff. They're generally using those flask slots for things that aren't even life and mana. So then we're like, okay, so we're going to add this new system called charms, and they automatically trigger, and they still give you some interesting build choices, but they don't require the physical dexterity of having to, you know, of having to hit all these different buttons all the time and knowing which one to press. And so like that's another great example of like, okay, we can do something which is like, we've got a way to keep the depth, but we've also got a way to simplify things down and make things easier. And along the way, I actually think it actually improved some things about build choices too, because a flask with the mods on flasks are much more important to think about.
Haven't played PoE, but very interested in jumping into PoE2. Hey, man, get on in there. The PoE2 is going to be, it's still going to be a complicated game. Going to be a lot to learn. Everybody's going to have to figure it out because there's really not going to be any build guides. Even this one, I'm using a build guide right now. I don't know enough about PoE to really make my own builds or really figure it out. I just don't have enough seat time, which is crazy. 150 hours is not still like you know, but yeah, PoE2 is going to be good. I think the biggest thing for PoE2 is that if you start making your build and you don't like something, you can just respec, versus this game where you gotta hope for drops or you only get a few passive respec points. If you go too far, you can't really go back, and then it's like, well, and the whole end game progression where now you just level up everything as you do it versus having to spec into the Atlas tree of like, okay, I can only do breach, and then okay, I got to pull that back. Now I want to go do end game bosses. Now I got to spec into the bosses. Now you can just run around and do everything. PoE2 early access like 25 hours and more in game. Yeah, so they're saying like pretty much the average player is going to take about 25 hours to beat Act 1 through 3. Act 4 through 6 is not coming until, I believe, I don't know if it's after early access or just, you know, whenever they roll it out. But you will run through Act 1, 2, 3 in cruel mode. You know what I mean? And then you get to end game. So might take you 35 to 40 hours to reach endgame, you know? Rode to level 100 and then went from 100 to 1. Well, once you get up to those higher levels, like if you're 91 and you're almost at a level and you die, you lose XP and you lose a good chunk. So you can't just face tank something 2,000 times and just keep stacking XP. You won't go down a level, but you can go back to 0 XP. So it makes it very difficult to get to level 100. Not a lot of people make it that far. And excited about it, man.
Choosing between when you've only got 1 flask of each type. Like if you've got 5 flasks, then the mods kind of fade into irrelevance because it's like, well, who cares? I'll just make it blue, and whatever mods I get, I don't really care. And like, sure, maybe there's a couple that people seek, you know, like instant healing and that kind of thing. But now when it's like you've got 1 life flask, it's like, okay, you really care about what mods those are, and like there are different choices now about like, well, what am I prioritizing here about what I want in that flask. So I think that actually improved depth in some ways as well. So that's just kind of a long
Makes
rant
sense.
about a very specific system there
Yeah.
to give you a
No,
kind
no, no.
of example. But effectively, that's the kind of design process we go through when we're thinking about like how can we improve things for new users without actually breaking any, like removing
I
any
like that
depth for
change.
high-end players while still having all these
100%
build
for it.
choices that are going to matter in the long term.
So I think that's really smart because the thing is that looking at the charm system for the potions specifically is that you guys not only simplified it, but then you actually ended up creating more depth in a system simultaneously. So not only did you make it more accessible for a newer player, but also now more seasoned players have to balance, okay, well, I'm going to be doing this. I want to make sure that I have fire resist, or I want to make sure that I have frost resist, or whatever it is, and I have to fill whatever gaps with my build that I have. Well, that's how I'm going to, use my charms. Now they're hunting for charms, or they have charms that are filling up their stash tabs and whatnot. And I think that's really smart. That's smart. I like that a lot.
Same.
So as another one of my like new player things is that when I always came back in to try Path of Exile again, obviously every single time it was around a new league mechanic. And this last time that I got through, the Sellers of Kalgur was very easy to kind of get used to. It's something similar you've seen in a lot of other games and whatnot, so it was pretty familiar to me. But when I actually finally got to the end game for the first time, got to maps and everything like that, I was yet again lost, and my only solution was like 2 or 3 hour guides from Zizrain or somebody like that, right? And I'm like, it's not really what I wanted to do. I try to play games as blind as I can, and I was wondering, when it comes to the end game, do you guys have any plans to maybe nudge new players into the direction of maybe end game solutions that are best for them, or are there ways for players to be able to discover that?
So I think that the end game, just the core system in PoE2 is a bit more understandable and discoverable. And the way you can kind of see, so we've got the map that sort of shows you what you can find, and so it really feels like you get more of a sense of discovery, and you kind of slowly get introduced to the different mechanics. Like you're going to start finding those sort of extra league mechanics. Like you're going to see them on the map before you get to them. You're going to be like, oh, what's this? You go there, you try it out, this kind of thing. Like you're not just going to randomly run into like 10 different weird mechanics that you've never heard of, like right from the get-go. So effectively that allows us to kind of more slowly introduce those things. And all of those things, I think, have a much more considered ramp about how you get into them and how they go forward. We can effectively make sure that there's tutorialization for them at the point where you encounter them for the first time. There's just a lot more that we can do around that. So I think the system itself is just a bit more amenable to making that ramp into the end game a little bit easier. But ultimately the end game is where the complexity does start to ramp up a little bit. Like that is something that is definitely just going to be the case. That's where you start to because like especially as we add more and more content to it, that's where you're going to start to get all of these things sort of coming in. But as I said, there's a bit more of a consideration to just like how the ramp up works, like I think the other thing as well is that if you just want to concentrate on one mechanic as well, that's something that you can do very easily in PoE2. You can do that in PoE1 as well. But like the way that you do that, I think, is a little bit more obvious in PoE2 as well, with the way we've got the tablets and the towers and stuff like that. Like I think that the notion of like, okay, I'm gonna just do breaches and I'm gonna like try and seek this out, I think that's a bit more obvious too. So and then also the progression systems for all of them with the different trees, that kind of also I think just splits the complexity out from it, into separate areas. So you don't have to like worry too much about the.
Yeah, I mean, also from what I've seen, they have like in-game wikis. Like you can open a description that explains what an ailment does, or you can highlight a skill and it'll give you a video breakdown of what that skill is and how it's used and shit like that. And it's like, that's going to be huge for even people like me, but especially new players, where, okay, I don't know what this does. Bam, it tells you. You don't really got to look it up at all. Oh, I got the item here. Okay, so I can. Can we see? I teach Bay how to make a level 100, and right now she's more powerful than me. Could you imagine? Could you imagine if she is more powerful than me? I'm gonna lose my shit. I'm just ready, man. We got what, 10 days? Or I think it just clicked to 9 days because it'll be out. Yeah, 9 days now, like 9 days and 21 hours or something, 34 minutes, something like that. I'm starting to get map drops. We're starting to get them. Yeah. All right.
Ones that you're not doing right now. So I think that sort of helps as well. So I'm hoping that will improve things. But I must say that the end game is where we've had the least amount of closed beta testing stuff done.
Yeah.
It's only recently that we're able to get people testing that at all, and so that means that we've got the least information about how new players react to that. That I think is going to be
True.
something that we'll find out more as we get as we go into early access. Honestly, like it's a sort of it's very hard to get people in like a 1 week beta test to be able to get all the way to end game and like engage with that. And the people who get there are going to be
True.
most hardcore users anyway. So there's like that'll be very interesting to see how new users react to that end game system.
Yeah, for the end game stuff, at least what I saw from like the presentations and whatnot, I'll immediately say I think the map system in general is like light years ahead of what it is for PoE1. It's so much more like easy to read and understand and see what's going on than it is in Path of Exile 1. And especially like the more like simplified skill tree for the maps as well. I think that helps out quite a lot. Path of Exile seasons have always seen a lot of players come back. It seems that it's always an actual event, momentous occasion. There's a ton of people that file in. You got a bunch of people streaming it on Twitch. What do you guys think is the key to maintaining that long-term engagement that you guys see with Path of Exile?
So I think there's a few elements. So one of them is the thing that I already mentioned before about the full economic reset being really important. But the next one is as well is that our just general view on maintaining a game, and I think this is something that the industry is more generally coming towards now, but only in the more recent years, is coming to the understanding that you don't want to keep players around forever. You want to give players a good experience that they're going to enjoy for, like a few weeks, a month, maybe 6 weeks, something like that, like some amount of time that's like bounded. And then you're happy to see them go to play other things, and then not in the knowledge that they're going
That's
to
a
come
good way
back
to look
again
at
later. Like you don't have to hang on to players forever, and I think that mindset is something we've had for quite a long time, and it's something that
You don't really see that mindset with, other, like they want you to stay on their game all the time forever. They try to keep you. And the fact that they're like, yeah, like we'll keep you for a couple weeks and then, go, because they didn't know we got other games to play. There's a ton of games out there. And then, come back when we have a new league. Have your fun, play it, enjoy it, and we'll see you on next league. Just so many things that they do at Grinding Gears just make so much sense, man. Oh, what's up, Sand? Even Mr. King, how's your day been doing? Have you tried the new chase mode, Need for Speed? I'm not gonna play it, dude. I just hate Need for Speed Unbound. I've watched I think 2 videos on it. All right, and I gotta be quiet because the girl's got a meeting again. But like, pretty much seeing how it is and seeing the crap rewards. It's just not worth it. Not worth it, and I'm not paying for the speed pass again. I won't do it. I will not do it. So, yeah, you won't see me playing it. No, sir. Not gonna happen. It's just like, okay, cool. You literally put blacklist liveries on cars that aren't the blacklist cars, yet you have those cars in the game that you could have done properly, but you didn't. They've given away the Civic R35 like three times now. So it's like, what are we doing? There's cool, it gets a new mode, but from what I hear from people playing it, they're a little annoyed that there's a time limit. They're annoyed that the lockdowns aren't mapped. It's random, and if another team beats you to it, well, there's no more extraction trucks, and then what are you gonna do? So you kind of have to speed run it. You can't take your time, and you got to try to beat the other teams. When you're not, I guess you're technically competing against those other teams, but then at the same time you're not. goofy. I saw somebody say within 4 lockdown modes they got the M3 cars, and they were like, yeah, whatever. You know. What's up, Angelo? It just doesn't, you know, doesn't appeal to me. I also just really hate the physics of the game. I just, meh. Big meh. So there's that. How I feel about it.
You know, just I think, yeah, just much better for the long term. Like there was a period, you know, when the MMOs were big, where it's like, you know, everyone was trying to like hang on to players for the longest amount of time. They were all subscription models, so it was like the interest was, you know, keeping people around forever.
Yep.
And
I think we all
it takes a
played
while
WoW.
for that kind of yeah. It takes a while for that mindset to kind of go away. And it's sort of very interesting to see as well that like and this is kind of a weird maybe a weird connection, but in the mobile world, for some reason I feel like they still treat players very much this way, that it's all about, like, they want to try and keep players forever. And as I said, I think that it's kind of something that is
That is true. The more they keep you around, the more the numbers are pumped up and the more money they make, all from microtransactions. Fair, I've tried the update today, but I've not been able to do this lockdown mode. Wait, can you not get anybody queued in with you? Because I know you have to have other people playing. Maybe try in like a few hours when people are home from work, maybe?
ultimately self-defeating, because players will just burn out. Like you really would much rather give them a satisfying experience than like, okay, you know what, I'm done with this, but I'm going to come back again later. So I mean, that's like one really important thing, I think, for sure.
So do you guys think that your monetization has something to do with that? Because like you guys have a very like player first approach to your monetization. You guys are, I mean, especially in the like free to play realm, you guys are, you know, a rare breed to say the least. How much of an impact do you think that has on it?
I mean, I definitely think that comes a lot to sort of player trust, you know, like by not being aggressive with monetization, by making sure that we, you know, everyone, what we do feels fair. I think that it just means that, you know, players trust us and they're much more likely to spend money just on the idea that, you know, I'm supporting the game that I'm enjoying playing. Yeah, look, I'm sure there are things that we could do that would like juice our monetization significantly beyond what we're doing now. But we wouldn't enjoy doing those things. And I think that ultimately be self-defeating. You know, it's much better to just do what we do. And honestly, like, monetization is something that, like, it's not our first thought when we're coming to design things. Like, our first thought is about designing the game, and then monetization really is like, okay, like, obviously we want to make some cool stuff there, but it's like really the first thing is like, first make a good game, and then if the game is good enough, the hope is that players will then want to support you.
Yeah.
The hope is that players will want to support you in what you're doing. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of always been our view on it. And you know, it's funny, even at the start, so we started the game in 2006. Like working on it, and at that time free to play was really not a thing in the Western world, and the reason why
Who we got here? Okay. Level 5 consecrated. Gain a rampage while at maximum charges. Man. There's 22 hours in Skyrim. I remember the cruise control button. Cool.
we chose that is because we kind of thought, you know, well, we're not some big studio, we're just some random dudes in New Zealand, you know, like if I don't think we can even get people to buy our game, and like how would we even distribute it, and like all this stuff. Like we were like, we couldn't even do this. So free to play felt like a way for us to be able to actually get an audience. But then the only examples that we had were all of the pay to win things that were going on in Asia at the time. So we were like, well, obviously nobody in the we were like nobody in the West would ever accept anything that was pay to win. Clearly, right? That's clearly not okay. It's kind of what we were thinking about at the time. So we were like, well, so obviously we need to do all of this cosmetic stuff that we do. So that was kind of like our thinking back then. And it's funny because it turned out that actually Western gamers will accept pay to win in a lot of cases. There are like a bunch of pay to win games that are successful in the West after all. Yeah. But our whole thesis at the time was like, you know, nobody would accept this. I mean, we wouldn't accept it, right? As players, like that's what we were thinking. So therefore, you know, that was the monetization model that we picked. Yeah, that was our thinking.
I think that in a lot of ways that the player first approach, not going the pay to win approach and things like that you've seen with many other games. Well, there have been some successful ones that are out there. I think especially recently, you know, I'm not going to name any names or anything like that, but there's a lot of live service games that have come out that did lean on those pay to win systems, or they were a little bit too aggressive with their monetization. Maybe it's they monetize too many things, maybe they price things too high or whatever it might be. Especially when there's games that are like parallels of each other, right? You'll have two games that are basically like the same thing, but one is, you know, way more expensive to play than the other one. I think that it builds a lot of customer loyalty more than anything else. And how do you think that loyalty like really plays into like the longevity of your game? Because like I said, I've seen a lot of these games basically come out and then fizzle out really quickly because of their monetization.
I mean, it absolutely does factor into it. Like, no doubt that it does. But I mean, you still at the end of the day have to make a good product, right? Like like the gameplay itself is king. Yeah. And I would say that the main thing you don't want is the monetization to be getting in the way of that. And monetization really can do that because the moment that you monetize something, the game designers are influenced by the existence of that thing. Like if you're selling a certain thing, like even if you don't even realize that you're doing it, you're going to be making game design decisions around making it so that people actually, you know, buy that.
I think battle passes are probably the best example of that, where they like they're curbing all of the gameplay around how you progress a battle pass and things like that.
Right. So yeah, like that's why you've got to be so careful what you decide to monetize, because it will affect what you do with other things, and I think that's almost inevitable to an extent that. Yeah, like it's like it is so dangerous to do that stuff because it just affects you so much. And I actually think there's a thing that in my mind is connected by the way here that it's not technically the same thing, but you know how a lot of live service games will have like, oh, like play this weekend and get double drops, and play this weekend and get 2 times experience, and this kind of like stuff like that. Like that stuff, I think, really undermines the integrity of the game very significantly in the long term. Like that stuff, like sure, that weekend a bunch of people will turn up, but then I feel like then you're like, when you don't have that, now you're much less likely to play. And so then you get into this death spiral of like, okay, well, the only time people turn up is when you start turning on double experience weekends. And so it's like, now that's what the game is. And it's like, you've kind of compromised the whole thing. So it's like, even just that, like stuff, that's not even really to do with monetization even. It's just like another thing where it's like, it's an outside element outside of the gameplay.
You're using marketing to push gameplay.
Yeah, that shouldn't be there. And I really hate that stuff. And like, I mean, you like, people will all the time suggest this kind of stuff, right? Like, and you get this with like third-party publishers as well, where it's like you'll be publishing in a market and they're like, oh, we want to be able to run an event where blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, we just will not do it. Like, in the long term, it just breaks things. Like, and they'll say, look, when we do it in this game, we get so much more players. And it's like, well, yeah, you do that weekend. But, you know, like, it's just not good in the long term. So we never do that stuff. And, I think that it's once again, another one of those things that in the long term, I think is much better for the health of the game.
I think that like generosity is always a good thing to have in games, and maybe it's not like double XP weekends or anything like that, because obviously I wholeheartedly agree with you that it has a negative impact more than a positive impact in a lot of cases. You know, I brought up like Warframe like earlier. Every single day you log into Warframe, there's a reward that you get, no matter I think how long you play the game, and sometimes that reward could be like a 75% off of the you know, premium currency for the game or something like that. So players always feel rewarded for logging in all the time. So, you know, I think there's different ways to go about it, but yeah, for sure, that's it's definitely not the way. You know, one thing that I definitely wanted to make sure to bring up as well is I'll be real, the carrying over all microtransactions from PoE1 to PoE2 is unheard of. It is most companies would probably see this as an opportunity to be able to double dip, to be able to, you know, have their existing audience pay for all new things all over again, start over fresh in an entirely different microtransaction ecosystem. What was your guys' motivation to, you know, what a lot of companies would probably look at as throw away all that money?
So I think there's like 3 or maybe even 4 sort of things going on here. So one of them is having started from a position of this is an expansion to Path of Exile 1 certainly was part of the, like, part of the initial sort of thinking there. But the other thing as well is that, okay, so let's think about sequels to live service games that have existed. Now, every time that people have done sequels to live service games, and there's not like that many of them.
No.
A lot of the time, the sequels end up doing worse than the original game, and you have to go back a little bit for some of these. But effectively, like it's not always the case that the sequels do better. But what had been the case before for all the sequels to live service games was that the original game effectively took a back seat and no longer received any development, and effectively, was dead. And we're like, well, why do that, right? Like, why do that when we have something that there is an audience for that people love?
We're playing it today, right?
So I'm like, right. So I'm like, okay, well, in order, like, when you're a game designer, you think a lot in terms of incentives, right? It's like, okay, like, because like just as a general mindset as a game designer, you're like, okay, because every time you design anything, you're like, okay, what are the incentives for the player? I'm also thinking about like, what are the incentives that we as a company will have, depending on how we structure this. So I'm like, okay, if we make sure that the microtransactions span across both games, that means that as a company, we will have an incentive to make sure that Path of Exile 1 continues to receive content, because we.
Here, look at my Path of Builder real quick. Gonna act. That real quick. Speed. What we want to do. Okay, I'll take that. What's up, Shepherd? Hello, sir. I'm watching some, catching up on some of this PoE2 news. I figure I might as well put it on screen and listen to it while I play versus sitting here by myself, Man, you don't talk, you two gave me ads. Yeah, man. There's so much news coming out. So many interviews and discussions of people that played it, and Jonathan here running your games, and it's like, I just want to digest it all, man, Want to see it.
Will still be getting monetization from that, because the feeling that players will have is that PoE1 is still getting, because PoE1 will still be getting monetization because of the fact that all that stuff goes back as well as forwards. That means that we'll always be incentivized to support it. So effectively, I want to build into what the company is doing, a way to incentivize us to do the right thing here. And so that's part of the reason why we did it that way. But there's one other point as well I want to make, which is that when you do run a live service game, you kind of realize that the stuff that's selling is the new stuff. And I don't think that reselling a bunch of stuff from the past to everyone again is necessarily even going to make that much money anyway. It's sure, there's stash tabs and stuff, and that would have been a short-term injection of cash probably if we'd done that. But really, in the long term,
attention.
There's two things that are going to give us more money. One of them is getting new players. And those new players won't have paid us any money before, so they've got nothing to carry over. And the second thing is, keeping people interested in playing the game over and over again through all the different leagues, and thus, buying supporter packs through each of those times as well. And people having all their old stuff carry over really doesn't matter for those things, right? If our goal is long-term success of PoE2 and 1, then it really you know, we can make this, and I don't think it should really hurt us at all in the long term. So I think just like for several reasons, it was the right move to do, and obviously players, you know, are very happy about it as well. It makes the people who played the game before feel valued, and like, you know, we're not just going to throw this stuff in the garbage whenever we decide to do something new, which I think is very important. You know, there's that feeling of like we actually care about all of that stuff that we sold you before. You know, like, so I think that all of that stuff combined really does just make for, you know, to me, a no-brainer decision. So this wasn't a difficult decision at all. It was something that was very obvious to us right from the point when we decided to make PoE2, and you know, we so I guess that's the sort of our thinking behind it.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. My stash tabs, thank you, by the way. But it's just it's an interesting direction to take. But I wholeheartedly agree with you that it seems like a no-brainer decision to just go ahead and transfer things between the two, because I think in a lot of cases for like the existing PoE audience, you're gonna have people that are gonna play both.
For sure.
Right, like they're gonna go back and forth between the two of them, and they're gonna spend money on both of them.
Yep.
Sure.
And again, I think this kind of goes back into this like conversation of like, you know, when you treat players like that, when you make things so accessible, when you don't make a situation where it looks like you're just trying to take money from them at every given turn, I think it builds a relationship in which they don't feel like they need to spend money. They feel like they want to, like they want to support you. And I think that's something that's really important. This ties into like a conversation. This is more of like a philosophical thing on my part, but you know, over the last couple of years, I've noticed that there's been a trend lately where I think that a lot of companies are trying to either strike a balance or try to trend in the direction of like younger audiences and different, you know, people like to say the mythical modern audience or something like that. And you know, one of the things that I've noticed is that like great games just seem to land well, right? Like Elden Ring is a game that's played by ages probably 13 to like, I don't know, probably folks in their 70s have played Elden Ring. Like it really does cover that massive group of people. And I think that in a lot of cases, the industry is kind of losing sight of how like older players are not aging out of video games like they would in other industries. So like they feel like they have to target their games towards something else. And I noticed like the first thing that caught me off guard was when I logged into Path of Exile, and the first thing that happens is all of the other characters get hung. And so it's like it's not a game that immediately wants to treat you like a child. Like it has its tone, it knows what its universe is and what its themes are. You know, how do you think you strike that middle ground, or do you think it's necessary to strike a middle ground with an audience?
Well, at the end of the day, what we're doing is making a game that we enjoy, right? Like we're making a game that we think is cool. And I think the danger really comes when you try to make a game for an audience that you're not part of. Like I think that's where you start to make things that appeal to nobody. You know, because you probably the people you're trying to make a game for that aren't you feel patronized by whatever it is you're doing. And there's
a lot of examples of that.
Yeah, and you don't, and also you don't, you know, once again, you just don't know what it is they want. Like the only person that I know, like the person I know the most what they want is myself, right? Yeah. Like I know exactly what I'm looking for in a game, and so and also like a lot of, you know, the people on the team as well, like, you know, like the people on the development team really need to like what it is they're making. So as I said, we're making a game for ourselves primarily, and I think if we do that, that we will find an audience of people who are like us, who enjoy this kind of thing. And yeah, we do enjoy, you know, like darker themes and like doing, you know, like fun stuff. Like just honestly, it's just really fun to do this stuff. The most fun that our artists have are when they're like making things that are more extreme. Like you probably, I guess you probably didn't. Oh no, we did. We show you in that presentation the Black Chambers that has all the crazy body horror stuff, and it's like they had so much fun. Just like, oh yeah, what do we get this guy? Just like pull his intestines around a crate, like a, you know, around a gear train, like, you know, like stuff like that. They're just like, you know, and then like slicing the guy in half vertically. The
minute I saw like the cheese grater machine, I was like, thank God.
So it's like there's a smile on the artist's face when they're designing stuff like that. So it's like, and you know, and if they're enjoying it, then the players will enjoy it. So you know, like I think that's really what it comes down to. Just target yourself, like make stuff that you think is cool, and then so long as there's enough other people like you out there, then you'll get a big audience.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. These are we're into the bonus round here. Here we go.
Bonus,
Path of Exile. Oh, this is a really good one. So obviously, long-standing game. There's a lot of narrative and story elements from Path of Exile 1. A lot of world building that's very pivotal to this game. It's picking up off of the events of Path of Exile, obviously. How do you guys approach storytelling and in a way to keep players invested, but also, with Path of Exile 2 coming out, how are you guys going to, onboard those new players that maybe won't go play Path of Exile 1?
So as a starting point, like you really can play through PoE2 and understand the story without knowing anything about PoE1. Like it is the same world. There are going to be some characters to repeat, that kind of thing. Like if you played PoE1, there's a lot of stuff there for you. But we do have to make sure that the story feels engaging to someone who just didn't experience it before. I think one of the things that's really interesting with storytelling in an action RPG is that you have to be really careful not to be overbearing. There are cases where we expect people to play through the game lots of times, right? And so if you have a lot of so the quintessential thing that a lot of games do, most games do, is they'll detach the camera from the play, from the play position, and they'll do things like you talk to an NPC and it comes down and you've got stuff like that, right? And I think for a game that you play through one time, that stuff is very effective and works well, and it does help with engagement in the story, and that's a good thing. But the moment that you do that, when you've got a campaign that you want people to be able to run through quickly, just taking the camera away from where it is and putting it somewhere else immediately makes it feel like a chore to engage with all of those NPCs and everything. Like in PoE1, if you want to, you can burn through all of that story and quest stuff very, very easily. And so we're kind of trying to make sure that in PoE2, we had this sort of difficult challenge of we want people to care about the story more than they did in PoE1, but we also don't want to have that feeling of you made the campaign this annoying process to have to go through. I think that is something that some of the games have run into, and so then they start to think, we need ways to skip it, and it drives all of that stuff, right? We want we want to try and do both. So I think that what we've really tried to do is to add more of that story stuff through the campaign in ways that are both not annoying but do sort of allow you to experience stuff without having to stop your gameplay. So you've got things like as you're walking through areas, sometimes that you can click on that will play as you as you run through and stuff like that. We've also made the more animated story moments that you sort of get to experience without actually having to stop running around. You've got things like boss intros and things like that. You get a moment to tell a bit of a story as the boss is coming out, with a few lines of dialogue that can really make sell the idea without kind of getting in your way. So I guess that's the sort of main thing. And I think one of the games that inspires me the most, and strangely enough in this regard, is Half-Life, where they always made sure to never break the character's ability to you've got one perspective through the entire game, right?
Yeah.
There's never a moment where where you have a cutscene or you fade out and fade in and do something else. And I agree with that thing wholeheartedly. The moment you do that, you feel like you lose control and you feel like it's a game telling you something rather than you playing something. So I actually am a big believer in keeping the character's perspective the entire time. So that being said, we do have a few things. There's an intro cinematic that you guys got to see.
It was very good.
That was a lot of fun to create, by the way. And there's even a couple more things like that later on in the campaign as well.
Very cool.
Which we'll be doing. So yeah, I think that the story stuff is a lot better in PoE2 than it was in PoE1. But we still, as I said, have to maintain that idea of don't get in the way, don't be annoying, don't if you know what you're doing. Don't make you have to do annoying steps. Actually, here's another random example about this kind of stuff where there's this idea in where we have to consider both what the character knows but also what the player knows. So in our storyline, unlike a lot of games, if you know as a player where something is before someone has told you about it, then we will allow you to go and do that quest before you know about the quest and that kind of stuff. And we're generally pretty consistent with the idea that that you don't have to just talk to an NPC just to find something out that the player already knew. That's really important. You don't just, like if you can always like you have to go to an NPC if you have to like turn in a quest item because they need to like make something for you or do something like that. But if you already know exactly how something works, there is no requirement for you to talk to an NPC just to find that out. And once again, I think that's a bit unusual as far as games go because most story games kind of like the character has to know about something before you're allowed to do it. Whereas in a lot of cases, but here it's like it's very important to us that if you know what the campaign is and you've done the storyline a million times, you just go straight there, you just do the thing, and it's very there's nothing in your way.
Are there instances in which you could actually go and like take down like a boss that might be a part of a quest before the quest is actually taken?
Yeah, absolutely. That happens all the time.
Easy.
So we do in some cases have blockages and things that like, but when we do that, it's like it's because there's some key you have to get from something and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there are blockages along the way that are mandatory, but generally speaking, you can ignore the NPCs for everything except having to turn in quest items, and then you'll still be able to complete everything just fine.
That's cool.
And go through everything just fine.
Yeah, I like that because like the idea is this kind of goes back to one of our earlier discussions, but it's the idea of earning the ability to trivialize the game.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So like and that's something that players like. Who knew? Players like to earn things in games, including skill and reputation and items and whatnot. But I think that there's something really special in that where for these more experienced players, once you've run through the campaign a couple of times, now all of a sudden I don't need to talk to these people. I can go grab this. I can go kill this. I can do this. I can come back and then take the quest and turn everything in and then go back to doing what I was doing.
Sure.
That's very cool. I like that a lot. So just in general with obviously with PoE, you guys have PoE2, you guys have done a lot of new things. You guys have added a lot of new things. How much freedom do you guys give your team to experiment with new ideas, and how do you guys decide what features are making it into these games?
So it is honestly a mix, but I guess one of the things I like to do as a manager generally is that if someone suggests something and I've got an idea as well, then if those things are of equal weight, like if I don't have a reason particularly to prioritize one or the other, I'll always go with what the team wants to do over what I would prefer to do. I think that's just important because it means that the team just feels a lot more ownership over what the game is, and they feel like that their ideas are actually getting in, and they feel like what they come up with kind of gets into the final product. So like it's interesting being a game director because you've kind of got this mix of tyranny but also democracy in terms of like you obviously have to make sure that the game is going in the direction, like I'm not going to do anything in the game that is something that I wouldn't like, but at the same time if I'm ambivalent towards something but another team member is really passionate about it, then it's absolutely something that I think that they should be allowed to do because it'll make them much happier. And I think also the passion of the person making the product shows through a lot in the final result. So I always want to err on that side, but the main thing of course that I'm here to say is like but if I am like no, I don't like this, I really have to just be tyrannical and say this can't go in the game because I don't I really have to, on some level, have some kind of cohesion around the whole vision of the thing.
Yeah.
You really don't want it to turn into some kind of design by committee product either. So it is a bit of a tough balance, but ultimately, I would hope that the team feels like ideas they come up with have a good shot to go in. And generally speaking, I'm fairly fine with whatever ideas they come up with going. And so long as there's something that I don't think is making the game worse, I'm like, yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah.
You can. Let's go with that. Let's come up. Let's do this crazy boss. Let's do whatever crazy monster you came up with.
Yeah, I like that, especially with the boss design and stuff like that. I think that like when I was playing the build of PoE2 that I was playing, like the boss design is something. It's wild how much you guys have evolved it since your last game, or just in general, just for the genre. It's just so cool. Sure. Which actually it brings me to one final question that I have, and this is something that was kind of brought up when we were at the event. I just want to say that I appreciate the genius of this. But the idea that you guys are going to be releasing the first 3 acts and then you are going straight into the end game because you guys want to make sure that in early access, the end game is what is getting played. The end game is what's being tested. What's the motivation behind that? I feel like obviously part of it is somewhat a no-brainer because PoE is its end game in a lot of cases. These games are their end game in a lot of cases. But what are you guys looking to accomplish for it? And what was the what was the mindset making such a intelligent decision?
So it's funny because you say it's a no-brainer, but it surprisingly took us a while to realize that that's what we needed to do. And strangely enough, it actually happened. We changed direction completely to this when we were when we did the announcement for Settlers of Calgar. And so what happened was, so like we obviously had a bunch of in-game plans. We had a design for what the in-game would be, but we did the Settlers of Calgar announcement, and that announcement was really huge. And
it's so good.
On the
by
same
the way.
day, on the same day as that announcement occurred, there was also a Diablo 4 announcement where they announced, I think it was a class.
Right now.
And everyone was saying, like, oh, you know, Blizzard's making this expansion and it costs like $60 or whatever it costs, and the amount of and the content they're making is like not even as large as this random PoE1 expansion that's coming out. You know what I mean? Like there was all this sort of stuff like that. When I saw that, I'm like, okay, well, so first of all, like making a class is actually like a way larger amount of work.
Oh, it's a lot of work.
Than making Settlers of Calgar was. Like honestly, when you actually compare the two in terms of the amount of work that goes into it, one of them is a lot easier. But then I was talking to Mark about this, and Mark was like, well, yeah, but so maybe they should be making more of the type of content like what we're making. And I was like, well, you know, you're not wrong about that. Like, okay, just because something takes more work doesn't necessarily mean that, like, that's the right thing to be doing.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, hang on, are we making the same mistake with PoE2? Like, we were barreling forward thinking, like, we have to finish this campaign before we can work on all this endgame stuff. And then I was like, well, hang on, like, why are we making all this content that's really hard to make when we could be making content that's honestly easier to make, and probably the players will get a lot more satisfaction out of it. Like there'll be a lot more actual gameplay that comes, you know, it's like because like when you're making a game like ours, it's like you've got this phase where you make you have to make a bunch of art, you have to make a bunch of animation and like all this sort of stuff, and then there's the phase where like you get to like do a bunch of remixes and reuse and like all that stuff, and like an in-game typically is where all that sort of stuff happens. And like that stuff is honestly easier to do than making it in the first place. And yet the amount of actual value that a player gets out of that is like in a lot of ways higher.
Much higher.
So we effectively were just like, you know what? Like why are we not just stopping? Like we need to just drop everything. We were like towards the end of making to finishing Act 4. And we were like, you know what? Let's just drop everything that we're doing. We'd already done a pass through the game, by the way, so like a lot of that stuff's already done. But like we were like doing the polish work on Act 4. But like, let's just drop everything and just focus entirely on in-game now. Like, let's take what we've been doing with in-game and like now we're gonna put the whole company on it. We're gonna stop completely working on all of the campaign stuff that we're doing, and we're just gonna focus entirely on in-game and make that as big as we possibly can. Because yeah, the players will get a lot more out of that. And like honestly, like a 3-act campaign for a new player, it's already a huge game. Like sure, we're making a game that's that's 50 hours long, but having a 25-hour long game is also still a big campaign, right? Like, and yet, And the other thing as well about this is that if we have a bad end game when we get to early access, then we kind of have to say to people, hey, trust us, guys. There's a good end game coming.
That's true.
You guys don't really. I mean, we'll tell you kind of what it is, but like you guys have to just sort of trust us what it is, right?
That goes.
But if we have a great end game,
it's gonna be so good, I promise.
The campaign's 3 acts short, well, it's like you know exactly what another 3 acts is going to be like because you just played the first 3, right? So it's like you know exactly what to expect when we add that later. But we get to impress you with an end game before that point. So yeah, that really was what it came down to. But yeah, it was not really that long ago when we came to do that. And I think that was a really important decision because we effectively, and the other fun thing about it, by the way, is that now like making the end game for PoE2 is like going back to the making PoE1 leagues again, except with the resources of the whole company all in one thing. So it's like making 7 leagues concurrently, which is kind of a crazy thing, but it's been very fun. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun to work on that stuff, and it's pretty cool. So yeah, it's funny because in retrospect, it's like obviously this is the right move, right? Like obviously this is better.
Yeah.
But it did take a little while, and it took that moment of like, well, what the hell are we doing here, to actually realize that we had to change direction like that.
Yeah, because I mean, like from my perspective, when I'm looking at it, it's like, well, story content. It's not like it's not worthwhile, and the work that your folks have been doing on it isn't worthwhile. There's a lot of value in it, but the vast majority of that value will be extracted within the first couple months of the game releasing, and then done. Whereas endgame is the reason why people keep coming back to the game over and over and over
again. But also
a
lot of the value that we get from making that stuff is that we then get to use it to remix it to make it an endgame. And so like the in-game maps that we were showing, like all of them look like unique areas, but all of them are just like done by just like we've got so many assets through the campaign of the game that we can take and then turn into maps. Like when people are making new maps, it really only takes a few days to turn around a new one, because like in-game maps I'm talking about, because in terms of the environment, I mean, because they just take a bunch of existing stuff and they're putting it back together. And it's like you'd be surprised how different you can make areas feel than campaign areas by changing remixing a few different tile sets together, doing some changing the color of things, changing the lighting settings and all that sort of stuff, and suddenly you've got an area that just doesn't feel like anything else you've done. And then you make a few specific bespoke
like
tiles to kind of make
this game.
to add like a specific
1
thing
through
to the
5.
area, and then
Same
you've got a new
areas
map.
as 6
And
through
it's
10, but kind of different.
we can do that stuff so quickly, and it really makes the in-game feel gigantic. There's just all sorts of shit in there. There's so many maps and like interesting things to find, and the last benefit is that for a lot of developers, when you're making content quickly, you just feel so much more productive, and it's so much more fun to actually get stuff working. Like it's the slow grind that kind of wears on you over the years, but the whole just like, oh man, we're just like making maps left and right. We're like turning out all these systems. Like it just feels great to do. So
Yeah, I would imagine, especially because you got to think. You already do think, but with you guys been working on Path of Exile 1 for so long, it's like going back to their regular grind when you're just going to make the end game content, right? It's like, oh, we were already doing this. So that's cool. That's cool, man. I'm looking forward to it. I know a lot of people are looking forward to it. I think that it's going to be a very special game. You guys have put a lot of love and a lot of care, and it even as an early build that I've gotten my hands on, it feels transformative in ways that I haven't been able to express properly in words yet. But believe me, I will.
I'm really glad to hear that. That's great to hear.
Is there anything that you would like to say about Path of Exile 2, or anything you'd like to say to the audience for the end of this? Give it a second.
So obviously it's a scary going into a launch, right? Because you don't know how people are going to react. But I think that I'm really happy with the work the team have done on the game. Like it's just so I think it's a good game, and I'm just really looking forward to seeing how people react to it. Like I just want to see were we crazy this whole time what we were making, or did we actually do we have the right idea? Like all the changes we've made, all the things we've done. I just want to see does it actually, are players actually going to love it? And I'm hoping they do.
Yeah, I think they will. I think they will. Well, man, thank you for joining me today. I can't wait for the release of the game. I'm sure everybody else can't either. I'll be covering it, that's for sure. There'll be more content that's coming on it. But thank you for joining me today, man.
Thank you very much. It was nice chatting.
Family.
Hell yeah. Oh. That's over. Yeah, I mean, that was solid interview with Jonathan there. I mean, just hearing him talk about their passion for the game and looking at other games and what they fail to do and how they correct things and how they move forward with certain things. It's just like, that's what we need. That's what we need, from gaming, because look how many games come out and they flop or they're unfinished, or it's just a nightmare. I mean, this shows you that you can literally put out a game in early access that still has more content coming, but is in a polished enough state that it provides just as much as another full game, but then still has more to come. It's crazy. Definitely confident. Yeah, I mean, just like from, our community here with people that play racing games mainly, there's people that are excited to play PoE2 that have never played the first one. Like, people, it's definitely on the radar, and I hope this game is huge. I mean, we already know it's going to be, but if we just get so much new people in there, it's gonna be so good, man. It's gonna be so good. I'm looking forward to it. But I'll drop the link again. I mean, Legendary Drops just makes so many good videos. If you guys have never heard about him before, of course I'll link him when the stream's over in the description, tag him. But guy has a ton of good videos. So the next one I want to watch is from Talkative Tri. He's been doing interviews every freaking day. And I believe he's doing one today with Jonathan, the same guy that we just indirectly we just saw. Oh, he's live. 5 p.m. Eastern. Okay, so this is going on right now. I mean, do we tune in? Do we tune in? I don't want to steal his thunder, man. I'll wait till it's up. We'll watch his older one. But let's just pop in real quick. I don't want to get fucking copyright for that. Ads. Oh no. Hell yeah. But let's at least see what they're talking about. But we'll watch the one from yesterday that I didn't get to finish because I fell asleep. And then we'll go on to we'll come back and watch the actual video of this. Go.
Like we knew that we kind of knew that we weren't happy with flasks, but we hadn't. I don't think I'd really appreciated.
So kind of
the
same
degree-
thing. It's probably going to be mostly the same thing that we just heard from that. We might get some new info. We'll see. But we'll watch Talkative Tri's video from yesterday with the Still Sane podcast. I think Big Ducks put this on.
Exile's Talkative Tri here with
Hello,
another
sir.
step on the path of Exile to Hype Train Still Sane Pod Circuit. That is a mouthful. Tonight
it
we
is.
speak to Big Ducks about everything
Big
PoE2
Ducks.
related. He was at that recent LA event.
So this one, I'm excited to play Mercenary. All right. Real excited to play Mercenary. And this guy, I think, played 8 hours of Mercenary. I think I only got like 10 minutes into it, but we're going to watch it again.
Played the Mercenary for 8 hours, and he
There it
is
is.
an absolute wizard when it comes to bestowing wisdom on us about Path of Exile in general. Tonight it's Big Ducks. Tomorrow it's game director Jonathan Rogers. The day after that, it is Neversink. Without further ado, let's get into the pod.
Do it.
Someone loves Big Ducks. Okay, well, that's good, because guess who we're talking to today? It's Big
Ducks.
Ducks, and we are talking about all things Path of Exile 2. Man, I got to start with it. You just played Path of Exile 2 for like 8 hours in LA as the mercenary.
Yeah.
How was your time playing?
Honestly, because you were at the
Kinda hard.
console one, right? Like you were at the console event.
I was.
Yeah, in the console event, it still definitely felt like it was in like beta or maybe alpha or whatever you want to call it. This time, it really did genuinely feel like we were for real playing the game. It felt like I don't know, like 90% of the way there, like 95% of the way there. Like the waypoints were all done. Like the progression just felt so much smoother. The monsters didn't have any of those like little problems that we experienced back then, and like the mercenary in particular. As I kind of said in my video, like there's some problems early on, but once you get going, it honestly feels pretty good.
Yeah. So you think
I'd like
the
to hear.
balance was intact then? It felt good. It maybe was just the mercenary itself that takes some time to ramp before it just starts blasting through monsters.
Yeah, when I talk to everybody else, because I spent actually quite a bit of time, like the last 45 minutes or so, just kind of like getting like the vibe from everybody that was there, because it was mostly Diablo 4 people, which was a little weird. Like Diablo 4 and like there was a bunch of media there. It was probably at least half media people, honestly.
Wow. So a
And-
lot of games journalists and the like.
Yeah, there was a ton of journalists. It really felt more like a media event than like a gamer event, honestly. But yeah, everybody said it mostly felt okay. The people that played the mercenary and tried to play the crossbow said like, yeah, first 20, 30 minutes were pretty rough. I personally think that I'm gonna start, if I start the mercenary and I want to do crossbow, I'm just gonna use like a 2-hand for like the first 30 minutes. But
And then switch.
but yeah, the balance felt really solid. I didn't get those like weird situations where it just kind of felt like a monster was super powerful. Like I don't know if you experienced this when you were playing, but the wolves in the first zone outside of town felt like really off balance wise when we played at the console event.
They massacred
those-
my wife and I. Massacred.
Yeah, all of those little things they weren't really there anymore. It felt like much more like the slope going up difficulty wasn't as spiky as it was before.
Well, I was going to ask about that. So I understand that they probably toned down and fixed some areas. Is the difficulty still there even in Act 1? Because I got my ass kicked by the Executioner for an hour and a half before. Is it still
So-
difficult?
Long
Or?
time.
No.
What class did you play?
We were playing the Monk, and I had
Yeah.
no rare gear. I just had magic and normal items. And then my wife was the Ranger, and she had all the rares. And every time I died, she felt like she had to resurrect me. And then she'd die, and then we just keep restarting.
Yeah, so My second time playing through, it was definitely a lot easier for me. I do feel that like there was some like balance changes that made it a little bit easier, but all of the difficulty was still there. It just felt like for me, if you were playing the monk, I kind of understand, because when I was playing the monk, a big difference between that and the mercenary is the mercenary, it feels like, you know how in Path of Exile 1 you kind of run past stuff, like you don't really like stop and kill every single pack. You kind of just run, you kill stuff that you can as you go by. The mercenary can do that a lot more. I didn't feel that way on the monk. I felt like on the monk, if I came out to a difficult pack, I had to fight it and treat it like a RTS, like a what's it called, like an RTS battle is basically how I had to, is felt how I had to deal with it. Like if I got some like crazy difficult rare ranged mob back in the console event, as the monk, it was like I just almost didn't know what to do. With the mercenary, I had way less problems.
Yeah. And you have more options too, because obviously there's the crossbow, and then
movement speed on it?
grenades is what I'm really curious about. How did those
How
feel? Did they
much?
feel clunky because you have to aim them and they have the physics and they bounce and all that? Or did it feel okay even at the start?
So I didn't play a lot with the damage grenades, but I did talk to Havoc a lot, which
And?
he played with the damage grenades. Overall, grenades felt really good to me. I used more of the utility grenades, like I used like the flash grenade that like builds stun. I tried some of the other grenades, but I actually got kind of screwed over in Act 3. I was gonna switch to a grenade build, and I just found I found one of the like skill gems that you can cut in the entirety of Act 3. Like I was there for like an hour and I only found one. So I didn't get to play any of those, but the footage that I saw from Havoc and from what he told me, grenades honestly probably feel better than the crossbow in general, I think.
Wow.
Really? And can you turn them into your main skill, or are they more so bolstering crossbow shots and the like? I haven't watched any of Havoc's footage and I haven't talked to him yet.
It seems like you can make them the main skill. One thing that I noticed a lot with the mercenary, and I think this is probably gonna go out into other areas of Path of Exile 2 as well, is that the combo system seems insanely important, right? Like if you try to be stubborn and just use one ability and just like attack, attack, attack forever and not do anything else, not try to do the combos, not try to do like the utility skills, it really feels like you're behind by a huge amount. Like when I was in Act 3, if I was just using what I'd probably say is like my main ability, like if I was just using like fragmentation shot, I don't know, maybe it takes me like 15 or 20 seconds to kill something. If I use the combos, it's dying in like 1 or 2 hits. And it's just such a significant difference most of the time.
Did you feel any button pressure? I don't remember. Did you have the flask system, the new flask system on your build,
The new
or was
flash
that
system, yeah.
you did?
New flash
So
system is awesome, by the way.
it is okay.
It's so much better.
Yeah.
Because you can get this feeling where you just know where life is, you know where mana is, and they don't feel like flasks anymore. Like obviously they have charges, but you kind of just, it's like, oh, I need health, I'll press the health button. Oh, I need mana, I'll press the mana button. But button pressure, I mean a little bit. The problem that I have with the mercenary in general, it's not really a problem, but I think the thing that people might run into is that there's kind of this feeling that you get with the ammo system, because when you press a button for ammo, right, all that your character does is loads the ammo. That's it. That's all the button press does. So if you're trying to use 2 different kinds of ammo, let alone like 3 different kinds of ammo, it can get like a little square fingers, but it's honestly not too bad because you have one universal button that you fire all of your ammo with, right? Like whatever you've loaded into the crossbow, it's all fired with one button. So
Interesting.
it does feel a little weird and it takes a little getting used to. It's not like a normal class where it's like you press the button, the spell goes out and it hits stuff. It's like you press the button, your character loads the ammo, it takes the mana as you're loading the ammo, and then you press the button to fire and it shoots. So it's a little bit different. It takes like a little while to get used to.
Yeah. Well, that sort of gameplay is brand new in Path of Exile 2.
Hold on. Check something. I remember I missed one. I remember it popped on screen. I don't think I ever hit it. I don't know if I got that. I have to go check. Hold on, boys. Pretty sure. I missed 2 of these. I might have got. Okay. So yeah, I missed the one in the tunnel act. Figure it out. Tunnel. Okay.
And another brand new thing that I think a lot of people are thinking might be busted is the Gemling Legionnaire. It's almost like the Scion of Path of Exile 2, and I think it really leans
I don't know
into
how I
the
feel about
fantasy.
the
That the
Legionnaire.
mercenary is almost like a jack of all trades, in my opinion, like a bard in Dungeons and Dragons, where it seems that the more skills you pack onto the mercenary, the better you seem to be able to do. Whereas the warrior, I mean, that just looks like big bonk, hit, kill, you're
Big
done,
bonk.
right? The merc, it seems far more complex, and you can choose,
agree.
right?
I think that my take on the Gemling Legionnaire is that from the I think I have it somewhere here. Hold on.
Yeah,
When
you're
I
good.
was looking at the ascendancy points, it's like my feeling on this is that from listening to Jonathan and hearing what everybody said about the game, it really feels like they intend for you to have a lot of different skills, right? Like just a ton of different skills at any given time. And in my opinion, I think the way that the Gemling Legionnaire is going to go is it's going to go in some kind of direction where you have like lots of procs, because it one of the nodes gives you like 3 additional skill slots, right?
That's the thing that I'm thinking about, right? Yeah.
I have to assume that additional skill slots are probably really powerful because they have things like cast on ignite and cast on freeze and cast on electrocute, all those kinds of things, right?
All those buff
So
gems as well. Yep.
Yeah, I imagine that the Gemling Legionnaire is going to be this kind of similar to the Scion, like the way that people play the Scion right now. I
Mhm.
agree with that to an extent, because it's like it depends on how good like gem quality is. It depends on how good, like, I'm sure it'll have like gem levels and things like that. So I mean, it's probably going to be like an obvious shoe-in for minion builds and things like that, or certain kinds of like proc caster builds, which kind of fits with the whole idea of the mercenary anyways. It's like you're attacking and casting spells and maybe shooting a crossbow and doing this and doing that. You know, it seems like you can do a little bit of anything you want.
Yeah.
I'm honestly a little bit more hyped for the Witch Hunter though. The Witch Hunter looks
Same.
kind of nuts, if I'm gonna be honest with
All
you.
right,
That,
go
like,
in.
looking at the numbers. Okay, so who was it that talked about this a little
What's up,
bit? But
Krishan?
when I saw the Witch Hunter,
you doing?
and this all kind of hinges on just
I'm kinda looking
one
forward to the
thing
Witch
that we
Hunter,
saw
honestly.
in the reveal, right? There's this ability called Decimating Strike, right?
30%.
From what I heard when they were talking about Decimating Strike, it seems like it just takes 30% of the boss's health, right? Like this just takes it away. It didn't feel like it confirmed to me whether or not it's 100% chance for it to happen on every boss.
It's not. There's a
It
chance. There's
yeah,
a chance.
it kind of felt like it was a chance, depending on how high that chance is, and whether or not that damage is like actual raw damage. Like, is that damage going to apply ailments? Like, if it takes 30% of its health, is it like your full cold damage? Like, are you gonna freeze it instantly when it takes
question.
30% of its health? Like, I don't know, right? And depending on that, the rest of the ascendancy seems insane anyways, but like depending on that, it's probably going to be a pretty insane bossing character. Like if your goal is to just roam around the Atlas and find bosses and kill bosses, it seems pretty insane. Like
It's
between go ahead.
Especially comboed with Culling Strike. I don't know if you saw that leaked node, but Culling
Yeah.
Strike on everything is also on the Witch Hunter. And someone in chat is correcting us. It's a 100% roll, but it's between 1% and 30%. And it deals on the
Okay,
first
so-
strike.
Okay.
So it's the percentage that it takes is random. Okay. Yeah, and I
Exactly.
saw about Culling Strike. The thing about it is that it's different depending on the rarity of
So
the
it always
monster,
hits.
right?
It's just 1
Yeah,
through
that's
30%.
accurate. I was supposed to include it
Okay,
in my video
alright.
today. I even say in the video, I should be putting up a chart right now showcasing how different it is between each one. And of course I forget. And I have 100 comments saying, no chart, man, what's going on? Totally
Hey, at
forgot.
least it's engagement, dude. That's good.
I know,
But,
I know. I felt really bad. But I know what you mean, though. I feel like it'll be a very strong early league character, too, given how, one, you said bossing, of course, and then it has, like, explosions, too, and it's better against demons and undead. What?
Yeah, I'm always a little skeptical of those kinds of lines on nodes, like hyper specific lines like that. I'm always a little skeptical, but that node also has the 10% chance for enemies to explode, dealing life as fizz damage. So I mean, you take it anyways, right? But it's like undead and demons.
And everything is completely random, Ducks. So it's not like, oh, if I go to the
Can't believe 1K views for waiting for Crew Motorfest and this now. Gotta explain what this is about. Yeah, you know, when I do anything that's not Motorfest or cars, you know, nobody wants to show up. So crazy. But yeah, Path of Exile is literally just an ARPG, and you know, it's like Diablo. Hordes of monsters, make crazy builds, pew pew, have fun, right? So Path of Exile 2 early access comes out in 9 days. So guess what? It's actually 10 days, right? But it's like 9 days, 20 hours now. And a lot of interviews coming out, a lot of insider info, a lot of if you know where to look, and just a lot going on. And if you miss out on any of these, you're gonna miss out on stuff about the game. If you just want to wait for the game, cool, but like I want to know every possible thing. So I figured, well, I'm playing Path of Exile, I might as well sit here and listen to this stuff, you know? Why not? Why not? Come on, bro. Okay, yeah. Plus we're almost out of the campaign finally. And on to maps. I gotta finish this up. I'm gonna try creating a new channel for this. See, the thing is, I'll do better even without getting viewers on this channel versus starting a brand new channel and people that do come in like, oh, dude's got 20 subs. You know what I mean? People come in and say, oh, he's got 25,000 subs. You know what I mean? Never heard of the game? Damn. Same for Need for Speed for me and Crew Motorfest. Yeah. Yeah, it fucking sucks, man. You figure you got 25,000 subs you've worked hard for. And then 99.9% of them don't show up for anything but that. And then they have the audacity to come in and be like, when are you playing the crew? How about you play the crew? Play the crew right now. It's like, bro, I can't just play one video game for the rest of my life, you know? But yeah, it's just how YouTube
swamp
is,
biome.
man.
There's more demons there,
How
right?
it is.
No, it's all, I mean, I guess Breach is like demons, maybe. See, this is why they need a bestiary. I don't even know what demons are classified as.
I'm wondering how like the Atlas zones actually work, because the way that it seemed like they were talking, it seemed like they were saying that it's almost all complete RNG what monsters show up. I'm wondering if there's going to be like, is each biome going to have like a certain base couple of types of monsters that can show up, so there's some consistency? I would imagine it'd have to be like one base type or something, right? I wonder how random it's going to be, because one criticism I think a lot of people had in PoE1 was those, you know how you just kind of they just say you get PoE'd, you know what I mean? It's like you get that perfect combination of events where it's just there's nothing that you can do, and the game just decides, yeah, we rolled the dice and you're just dead and there's nothing to do about it. I wonder how frequent that's gonna feel.
I feel like they're doing all in their power to prevent that from happening, given the fact that you have one life on a map. I think something that I really am curious about, dude. How often do one-shots occur in the game, in endgame right now? They've probably had a solid 3-4 months of internal testing. Maybe they ran some closed betas. If they're doing this one and done, you lose everything in the map, right? You lose access to a pinnacle boss. You lose access to a unique map, potentially, if you die. I swear, if there are one-shots prevalent in the game, if you're building defensively, that's got to be wild. Do you think there's still one-shots that are prevalent?
My take on it when I was playing in this last event is that it really genuinely does feel like they don't want you to just randomly get like some kind of bullshit death, right? Like they don't want you to just
You're off
suddenly
work.
feel like you're out of control. Most of the time, I would say like 90 to 95% of any deaths that I had when I was there, it felt like it was my fault that I died, right? It didn't feel like the game just kind of like screwed me over. In Path of Exile 1, a lot of the time, it can just kind of feel like where you just want to throw your hands up and you're just like, what am I supposed to do there, right? In PoE2, it feels like, well, yeah, I probably could have like not walked down this little path, or I could have, you know, hit this enemy instead to be able to get out of the whole entire group of enemies surrounding me. As for the pseudo hardcore stuff, I have a feeling that it's gonna be pretty unpopular, like just in the broad audience. Like I don't think people like pseudo hardcore mechanics. I am hopeful that they do it well, and they said that they have made it more rewarding. Like that's the trade-off, right? Is that it's going to be more rewarding, and bosses and maps will give you more items because you can only die once in the map, right? Like you only have one chance. But
I mean, you can
my
leave
only
and come back
concern,
with the
if
6
I have
portals,
a concern for
but
this, is like, how long does it take to get to a pinnacle boss?
it's coming up on the feed for me, so yeah, it definitely is, right? It definitely is. It's just people are like, oh, that's not a racing game. Screw that guy. Happens. Does PoE2 have a druid? They have a druid, but it's not going to be at the beginning of early access. The druid and the huntress are going to come a little bit later. The druid and the huntress are going to be the next 2 classes to come in, I believe is what they said. They said they have one more transformation with the druid they gotta like finalize, and then it'll be good to go. But yeah, we're only getting what, 6 out of the 12 classes at the beginning of early access, and we're only getting 2 out of 3 of the ascendancies. So we could work on builds now, and then when we drop, when they drop the 3rd ascendancies, can completely change our builds. And then when they add 2 new classes, we can also use those ascendancies, I believe, for any other class. I don't think the ascendancies are like locked to that class now. I think you can like mix and match whatever, if I understand correctly. It's just gonna be wild, you know. These guys are not like COD, where it's the most viewed. We'll have our own niche, and that's where channels are based. Sad to see this doesn't ever work. Yeah, no, these, look at like Quinn or Zizaran or Darth. Like those guys were getting, you know, Quinn consistently gets 10 to 12,000 viewers playing this game over on Twitch, even when it's off. Like, there's a fan base here, you know. So you really know how to make another character? Not really. I'm pretty sure they said maybe, I don't know if you can swap the ascendancies. Probably not, but they did say you can like use any of the skills that are on like any of the other weapons. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. I've been digesting so much information, so excuse me if I'm wrong on that. But I would assume ascendancies are class based like they are now. Maybe it was the weapon skills that you could switch between classes. And like some of the nodes that are for like the witch, you could go and grab if you're like, you know, a druid or whatever. I think that's what I'm getting confused with. It's crazy. Like there's so much you can do in these games. So much customization and build possibilities. It's gonna be so fun
to be able to get to this
to mess
pinnacle
around
boss,
with it.
and then you have one chance. And say it's the first time that you've ever seen the pinnacle boss. Like,
You're gonna die.
How is it gonna feel if you run into the pinnacle boss and you die and you can't really do anything about it, and it's like multiple hours
There you
until
go.
you can get back in there?
That's a good
That's
point.
really my only concern about it, really. So
Dux, why are you like showcasing my future to me? I know this is going to be me. I'm going to walk into the pinnacle boss arena,
Die.
find, you know,
Gotta grind for
Zana,
6 hours to
whoever
find
the
him
heck is
again.
in that maze below the Atlas. Walk in, voice line, and I'm going to get Cirrus die beamed or something. And I'm just going to be like, Okay,
you just should
well,
have built tankier, man. Like, just
I should have built
like,
tankier because
pick your shield up and just block whatever abilities they got coming at you. You'll be fine, dude. Just play a full tank build and have it take like 6 hours for you to kill the boss. You'll be right.
there you go. I'll
Painted
quit it.
buckler.
It'll be totally fine. I'm
Quit
sure.
it.
Yeah, dude.
Now, I'm actually curious about this. I think it's leading into a cool topic because I know a lot of your content
That'd be
is
good.
guide based. You put out some darn good guides about Path of Exile 1. However, and I think many others are inclined to go into Path of Exile 2 as blind as possible. Sure, right now everybody is absorbing every ounce of Path of Exile 2 information on the internet. Then everybody says when PoE2 hits, they're going cold turkey. No Reddit, no Twitter, no YouTube. Going into Path of Exile 2 blind and playing it themselves. I would love to go into the Pinnacle boss completely blind. I probably will try to do it if I can get there. But what do you think the scene?
Yeah, I'm definitely going blind. Definitely. Let's see, if you focus on one thing, then it works, but if you try different stuff, it just doesn't. But yeah, good luck to you. Really try gaming channels. Yeah. It's tough, man, but I would, eventually like to be a variety streamer, Play what I like versus being stuck to a freaking car game that has a very limited audience. It's never gonna, help me grow. Because I'm having to make another character every season sucks. Yeah, but like there's so many builds you can do per character, and trying out all the classes is going to be one of the best things, Like I have no problem starting a new character just to see what crazy build I can make. To start a new channel on stories, philosophy, and the universe. Oh shit. That'll get big views if you do it right. Currently in the works of scripts, but yeah, hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Yeah, definitely work on that. Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah, dude. I would definitely watch 100%, man. I go down the rabbit holes with those fucking videos, man. I get lost. We should look at that legendary painted buckler. 6% increased. 100% increased evasion rating. Plus 5% chance to block. 50 to cold resistance. Plus 5 to maximum cold resistance. Okay. Flex cold damage to melee attackers. Physical damage as extra cold damage. Nope. Just not gonna work with what we got going on here. Oh well.
Is going to look like in terms of guides for PoE2? Do you think there's going to be a large audience of people that are chasing them on the internet? Are you going to put any out? What do you see that looking like in the next month and a half?
I think that people don't know what they want most of the time. If I've learned anything about the internet is that people will say a lot of things and almost always it's wrong. Like anything that they say is almost always wrong. I do think that the best way to go into Path of Exile 2 is almost completely blind. In game, you have essentially the wiki now, right? Like it's in there. You have every bit of information that you could possibly want. There's almost no need for a wiki like page anymore because of how good that feels.
You hungry?
But I think most people are probably going to go in. If they're going to play their first character, there's going to be a large percentage of people that just absolutely, utterly fail on their first character and be like, all right, it's time to go look up a guide. And they're going to copy what other people are doing. They're going to play it. Yeah. I don't think that's the best way to go about it. I think that it's way more fun. And honestly, most of the enjoyment in these kinds of games and the biggest reason that I'm actually happy to be excited about Path of Exile again, because it's been kind of teetering off for me for years now, but it's the exploration. It's actually like knowing that I potentially could have to figure this stuff out myself, and it's not like, oh, I want to play this build, and then I go on PoE Ninja, and there's like 15 people who've been playing it for 600 hours, and they already know absolutely everything. Everything's already discovered. Everything's already done. There's nothing for me to figure out, right? It's like if I go and try to make this build, and it's like Rue, Ben, Junggrown, and 4 other people have already made it 6 different POVs for it. It's like, what's the point of me even trying at this point, right? It seems like in PoE2, we're going to have a whole bunch of new stuff to do. The game's going to be different. There's all kinds of, with the double skill trees and being able to like specialize into 2 things at once and having all of the support gyms and utility gyms and all this. It feels like there's so much more customization that's going to be available for the game that it's going to be really hard to come up with the same build as someone else.
True.
Maybe the first, like the main pieces, but all of like those secondary or tertiary pieces are going to be, there's just going to be too many of them. Like how, you know, sure, some of them are going to be better and some of them are going to be worse, but like that's the thing that actually has me excited, is just figuring stuff out for the first time, finally.
Yeah, the possibility.
You'll get it. Go for it. Be your casual sport. See, yeah. Let me know when you get a video out with you know. I'll come check it out, man. It's like the universe fucking sucks me in, man. Legend inspiration to see a streamer wanting to watch. Yeah, man. Like, dude, I watch so much YouTube. It's not. It's yeah. That's all I watch is YouTube. But yeah, man. No, I never played League of Legends. I think I played it for like 5 minutes, but I just never got into it. I'm legally blind. Same, dude. I'm also legally blonde. Shout out Reese Witherspoon, you know? Why are you shaking your head? 40 mil, huh? Puppies. So much freedom to do a build, dude. It's gonna be crazy. There's a couple guys that have put out like the first 3-4 hours of like playing the new game and seeing all the skills, and then seeing you get these gem cutters, and then you can spec these support gems into the skills, and then you can spec into like the 1500 passive skill tree. You can go to wherever you want, and if there's like an ability from another class, like, oh, I want that, you can go grab. It's gonna be wild. And like, I feel like with PoE1, it's kind of, you're kind of set to certain things. I just feel like with PoE2, there's gonna be more that you can do. You know what I mean? And it'll be more beginner friendly, just because you can respec. And I don't know, man. I'm just looking forward to messing around and trying different builds and just really getting crazy, you know? Pop it when it comes out to then keep up the work, live content. But the streams are so chill. Help me get my studying done. Hell yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you popping in. Gonna grab my paper to write down the skill tree. Have you seen it? Have you actually seen it? Hold on. I think B posted it somewhere. Let me this is a skill tree. Obviously we're not zoomed in. Okay? But like, I mean, this is a skill tree. Now keep in mind, you only get 100 levels. Okay? You only get 100 levels. And in those 100 levels, you can only spec in 100 things. And you might get a couple extra passive skill points from doing some of the side quests and stuff. But for the most part, you got a lot of options. So it's going to be wild. And like, that's one of the things I struggle with on this game. Because if you look, I'm following a build guide. And at the moment, where do I got to go next? I think I got to go into crackling speed. Yeah. Which is huge. Boom. But, yeah, I mean, look at all these nodes. Right? It's like, fucking, I'm going to be sitting on PoE2, like, reading all the nodes. All right, where do I want to go? What's this? What's this? What's this one? What's up here? Okay. Because, like, if you look, like, yeah, I start out there, but then it's like, all right, well, these build guides have you go and grab things from over here, and they're like, all right, now zip down here and grab this one node all the way down here, which, you know, and they're like, oh, go up here and then go over here. And I think next I grab that. I gotta grab lightning mastery from this. What do I gotta grab? Increases reduction maximum at 30% shock. The second from the last here. And then after that, I have to go here, 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 and then grab energy shield leech. It looks like light eater. Or was I? Up here. Light eater, yeah. The 0.8% of spell damage leeches the energy shield, which is huge. Energy shield's always going to be up. 30% increase maximum total energy shield recover per second from leech. 24. Like, all right, cool. Or it's like, well, why am I not getting, you know, oh, you can have a better chance to freeze enemies. You want that? Okay, cool. Or do you want ignite? You inflict deals if you're doing a fire build. Okay, what's this? Minions. What's this? Minions. 30% increased damage while wielding a wand. I wield a wand. Should I spec into that? Okay, well, this guy spec'd me into that instead, so maybe that's not as good. I mean, it seems good. You can literally get 50% damage while wielding a wand. That's crazy. You know, that's big. So it's like, what do I want to do? Like, there's so many possibilities, dude. It's fucking wild. You know? Bussy Slayer, best name choice. I had to put 4 R's on it because fucking Bussy Slayer and was already taken, you know? Not even Google Translate can translate that tree. I'll finish the skill tree in my grave. It's so much to look at, you know? It's just so much. But I guess I'm not finishing this interview at the moment. I do have to let my dogs out, feed them. I'll probably grab something to eat. As much as I don't want to play it, I might pop in Unbound and try the new lockdown mode. And then, well, new summit tonight on Motorfest. And you know what that means. There's a car up for grabs, so we got to hit that pretty hard tonight. So I think, like as much as I don't want to, I'll pop in on, I'll reinstall Unbound. I'll try it out. See how it feels, make a video about it, because you know it'll get me views. Need for Speed update goated? I wouldn't go that far. I've seen a lot of opinions about it, and it's kind of how I already felt before it came out. A Man in the Grave, here's new update PoE. It's time for more kills. I'll play Unbound if you want help. Yeah, I don't really know. I think it's what, 3-person teams. I don't really know how it works, but so much to do. Yeah, but like the rewards aren't fresh. You're just doing some weird lockdown mode, and if, you know, other players get the truck, you time out, you fail. 200k cast, lost everything. Sounds about right. I don't know. I just like the whole giving us cars we already have with a different livery is just like really old and lazy at this point. You know what I mean? It's just annoying. Like, we just, what, I think in the Drift and Drag update was the last one I played, and they gave us fucking Oscar's Pizza Civic, and now they're giving us the Civic again with the fucking Sonny's livery, which is a GTI, which is in the game. What? You know what I mean? So it's like, cool. I don't need a 4th R35 when that car is not even that good. I don't know. It's just annoying, man. It's annoying. You know? But, look, man. I'm going to hop off of here. I was hoping to get through Act 10. We didn't make it. You know, we're close. We're close to finishing. But I'll be back. Probably no more. Around an hour. Much longer, right? And we'll do some car content for the rest of the night. M3 is free. Yeah, finally. You don't have to pay for EA Play anymore. Still prefer Crew, but Unbound cooked. I just don't want them to flop, you know, another game. Bet. But I appreciate you boys hanging out. And, you know, no, it's not the usual. But I'll be back. All right? I'll see you.